Alien was released in the spring of 1979, just in time to see the rise of video gaming. However, it wasn't until 2014, 36 years after the film came out, that a video game adaptation had finally managed to get it. That is, according to mixed reviews of wildly varying opinions that all managed to agree on at least one thing: that Alien Isolation had captured the look, the feel, and indeed the very essence of the Alien film in a way that no games had yet to before. And when I was playing it for myself, I got a bit of those same vibes. On my first day playing, it seemed to make so much sense to explore the Alien universe through System Shock's eyeballs that I couldn't believe no one's thought of that before. I also couldn't shake the disbelief that Alien hasn't already been milked to death as bad as, say, Star Wars has. But then I turned the game off, went and played Metroid instead, and came to realize just how ironic that sentiment is. Because more so than any other media franchise, the Alien universe just might be the single most heavily influential force on video games in history. It already has been milked to death as bad as Star Wars. The only difference is that other media properties, just distinguishable enough to avoid a lawsuit, have been doing it all along. We've got completely blatant ripoffs like the aliens in Contra, Alien Breed, Xenophobe, Duke Nukem, the Verdugo monster in RE4, Sergeant Johnson in Halo. A few less blatant but still obviously inspired thematic cliches include things like motion detector radars, ammo counters on guns, hallways coated in alien goop, quiet intermissions spent crawling through vent shafts, the term pulse rifle, and basically everything about Metroid, and Natural Selection, and Doom, the list goes on. Just think of how iconic and recognizable the headcrabs from Half-Life are, then watch Alien and realize just how little they changed about the facehuggers to make those things happen. I highly recommend anyone who's into video games to at least watch Aliens. I actually think the first movie's way better, but as a lifelong gamer, it is incredible to see just how much video game is in this movie, right down to the pacing and the action scenes. Any typical formulaic action game needs to strike a balance between tension and easily overcome repetitive obstacles, and unlike the one Alien in Aliens, the aliens in Aliens are blasted apart relatively quickly. They are that obstacle, and the dark sci-fi theme is the tension. The xenomorph is intimidating but defeatable. It's a deadly inhuman animal who boils any complex situation right down to a fight or a flight. The second half of Alien sees the characters constantly move into a new room, shoot a bunch of monsters, maybe lose a life, then they move into another room, shoot a bunch of other monsters, maybe lose another life. There's one scene where the Marines work together to guard the entryways of a little corridor maze so that another one can repair a satellite safely while they do it. They install automatic sentry guns to guard choke points. They keep track of everything going on with a little mini-map radar. There's even a final boss at the end of the movie. It's not just the premise or the monsters here that are easily adaptable to video games, so are these situations, and it came out at just the right time, 1986, and for a few years in the late 80s and early 90s, Japanese game developers were eating this stuff up. You could find aliens everywhere. Meanwhile, the franchise itself was seeing its own fair share of video games, not quite to Star Wars level of dryness, but still branching the brand off into a Byzantine network of interconnected, non-canon spin-off franchises. There are no less than 5 Alien vs. Predator games, all simply titled Alien vs. Predator. By the way, if the president of Square Enix is watching, please don't do this with Tomb Raider and Thief. It makes it really annoying to Google for the right game. Anyways, even the idea of a first-person survival horror game isn't new either. The video game version of Alien Resurrection tried that same thing in 2000 on the PlayStation, however with much less praise and much more shooting. And I think that's the critical difference between Aliens and its predecessor. Alien is subtle, Aliens is not. And frankly, neither are most video games. Thanks to the timing, the easy adaptability of the movie, and the slight necessary differences between those first 2 movies, Aliens is what got milked to death in slightly different ways than the previous movie. And what's unfortunate about James Cameron and Ridley Scott coming up with something people loved that much at the time was that everyone in the future proceeded to copy it to the point where it's all played out by now. The original source material has become retroactively generic. At some point after shotgunning a headcrab, facehugger, in a metallic hallway covered in the goo and the eggs from Duke Nukem, I had to slap myself. Alien invented this stuff, not Duke Nukem. If Alien invented bald space marines and pulse rifles and headcrabs and vent shafts, then would a game adaptation of Alien, no matter how faithful, feel played out and dull to someone who wasn't a fan of the movie? Isolation got praised for finally getting an Alien adaptation right, even after gaming as a whole has been adapting it for decades. So what did this game do that the decades of rip-offs, spin-offs, homages, lookalikes, references, and official adaptations not do? The answer is that Alien Isolation focuses precisely on what they did not do. It focuses on the delayed pace and the subtlety of the first film. It is quiet, it is slow, it is dark, and there is much more horror in there than there is action. It's a reminder of what has remained unique over the decades about Alien. It's a reminder that the first movie wasn't just about a marketable monster action figure killing people on a spaceship. It was a uniquely cynical and dark perspective on sci-fi, where the economic angst of the late 70s manifested itself into fantasy about frustrated underpaid workers who lived in a greasy dark steam factory that doesn't seem much like a fantasy at all. They're paid in company shares by a soulless foreign megacorporation that considers them expendable. One of the crew members is literally a corporate robot. When mankind finally makes first contact with intelligent life, it's dead and fossilized. We find their weapons instead, which means we have to hang out with this guy. When I saw it for the first time a few years ago, the defining feature of that movie was just how easy it was to forget that these characters were still going on a wacky science fiction space adventure this whole time. It's easy to forget, partly because of the greasy, worn-out technology, but also because the universe and the setup itself are straight up pessimistic.
Going to space, they say. It'll be an adventure. Assholes.
That pessimism, the slow-burning terror of both deep space exploration and the alien itself, are qualities that aren't as easy to adapt into a video game, but Alien Isolation tried really hard to focus on all of them. That's what set it apart. They didn't take the easy route and make a loud shooter like the hundreds of Alien and not Alien games before it. In this game, you have a gun, but firing it just once summons the alien to jump out from nowhere and kill you, and hell, so does pressing the run button. It's got the standard first-person WSAD control scheme, the crafting is there, the slight upgrading and the light stealth are all there, but it really wants to be a classical survival horror game deep down inside, which is a genre that AAA gaming has almost completely folded away into straight-up action games. It's also one of the few games to play retro-futuristic tech straight. In the economically decaying setting, the decommissioned space station this all takes place on, I can't help but think that this archaic technology might look just as out of date to us as it does to our character. That late 70s economic angst is back, and since it's a video game, that means we get it served through audio diaries and environmental storytelling. It seems half the flavor text in here is about people losing their job and needing someplace to go, and the advertisements and artwork posted everywhere are bitterly sarcastic. Here's a pill that prevents you from sleeping so you can get more work done, and look how happy she is about that. The decades of Alien games that were loud, arcadey shoot-em-ups weren't exactly unfaithful to the franchise. But what's happened here with Isolation is that this is the first time an Alien game managed to nail the quieter and more subtle merits of the franchise. All things considered, though, I don't think it's truly an excellent game. I have all sorts of issues with the pacing, the level design, the combat, the crafting, and the AI that I could gripe about in a proper review, but those setbacks aren't holding it back. They are being recognized. It's gotten quite a few uncharacteristically negative reviews, but it's also won a generous handful of Game of the Year awards. It's nominated for 6 BAFTAs, and although it's a bit late in the cycle, sales are steadily climbing to the 2 million mark, which isn't excellent for a AAA game in 2014, but it's not a bomb either. It means that there's a lot of people out there who appreciate this game. It means that while Alien may be one of the most influential pieces of media for video games, there's still room left to make it feel fresh. What it shows us is that the Alien media franchise as a whole is awfully easy to adapt, but fans are much more likely to appreciate an adaptation that focuses precisely on what all the other adaptations have been missing all along.